Hey everybody, Gene Clark here, and I'm excited to be with you to bring you my review of High Altitude Leadership. But first, I wanted to give you a little bit of a story as to why I love this book so much. This is my copy, but it's not just an ordinary copy of High Altitude Leadership. This is my signed copy of High Altitude Leadership. You can see it right there. To Gene, keep climbing, Don Schminke. So I had the privilege of meeting Don at a work function a while back, and it was unfortunate for me because I had a case of laryngitis at the time, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to ask as many questions and really participate when he was coming to speak the same way I would have been if I would have had my regular voice. But I made sure right before the event started, I made my way up to him, shook his hand, told him I really enjoyed the book, and I asked him to sign my copy. And he obliged, and he was very grateful to hear, the good things I had to say about the book that I want to share with all of you. And now this has become one of my prized possessions. So what you don't know is how important this book has been to me. While reading it, before I even completed it, I started looking inward, looking at my own compelling saga, and wondering, okay, what am I doing personally? And that led me down a path of reading more books on self-development, on leadership, on management, business, etc. And eventually that led me here with all of you today. I started my YouTube channel, started putting out these book summaries and these book reviews because I think self-development is very important, and I think true leadership is missing in the world today. And I wanted to bring that to all of you, and I wanted to help everybody out there kind of level up in life. So I'm very, very excited to bring you my review of High Altitude Leadership. So High Altitude Leadership, I find it to be a very solid read. It's got a great pace, it's got a great rhythm, and I had a lot of trouble putting it down. Now, you know me, if you've watched my last few videos, my favorite part is the stories. And I initially didn't like the way they were all broken up and would come back to it very quickly, but they'd go and they'd make a point. And then they might move on. You might be a chapter later and then you're coming back to the same story. But eventually that's what led me to really enjoying the book and having such a hard time putting it down, because the stories of the mountain climbing in particular were so intense and so compelling that you just wanted to keep reading so you could get back to the story to see what was going to happen to these climbers, how are they going to overcome these obstacles. And I think that's where they really did a great job, because it's different than most books where the stories are not quite as intense as climbing the toughest mountains in the world. Here you've got this very, very intense story, and all of a sudden you're going to just divert a little bit and come up with some sort of self-development leadership skill that relates to this moment that you can then bring back and relate to the real world for most of us non-mountain climbers out there. And I just loved it. It had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. And like I said, it was great for the book, and it was great for the pace of everything. If these stories had been, start to finish and had come to a nice conclusion, and then we moved on to whatever the point was, just like it is in, I gotta say, probably 98% of the books I've read out there that are on leadership or self-development. If it had been that way, it would have been very easy to put the book down, to come back to it, and I don't think it would have been as compelling to keep reading it. I don't think it would have grabbed your attention the same way, because if you're ending the story, okay, I can put it down. I'm at a good stopping point. We've all been there when we're reading a book. This one, even if the chapter ended, you might still be in the middle of that mountain climbing story. Or even if the mountain climbing story ends, you might still be in the middle of that chapter. And they're throwing in business related stories as well, but those weren't the ones that were really keeping your attention. It's that intense mountain climbing scenes, and it's the information behind it. It's those leadership skills behind it that just it flowed so well, and I can't recommend it enough just because of that alone. So in my last video on high altitude leadership, I discussed that they go over the 8 dangers a leader faces, and those are fear of death, selfishness, tools of seduction, arrogance, lone heroism, cowardice, comfort, and fear of death. In addition to that, there is the need for leaders to create a compelling saga for their teams to follow. My personal takeaway from that is I condensed those 8 dangers kind of down into 3 areas or 3 dangers for myself. And it was fear of death, selfishness versus teamwork, and the last one being luck. So for me, fear of death really encompassed both the fear of death and cowardice dangers that they listed. And the reason behind that is if you're afraid of death, you're afraid, hence cowardice. You're afraid to make a decision. You're afraid to move. You're constantly thinking about not dying. And like I mentioned in the previous review, all of these leadership dangers on the mountain lead to death in most scenarios. So I believe that fear of death and cowardice, you're going to end up in the same place. If you're too afraid to make a decision and you just stand pat and you don't make a decision, you're going to die on the mountain. If you're afraid of death and you're not thinking about moving forward, and you're not thinking about the team, and you're not thinking about how to progress on the mountain, you're going to die. And that's why those two relate so well for me, and I feel like those two could really be combined into one point. My second personal biggest takeaway was selfishness versus teamwork. And I think this really, again, it's right out there in your face. If you take a step back from the 8 dangers, you can really condense a lot of them down into the danger is selfishness, teamwork will get you through. If we look at, well, the second one alone is selfishness. Then you go to arrogance, you've got lone heroism, and you've got comfort. Selfishness, straightforward. If you're going to be selfish on the mountain, you're going to die. Arrogance, if you think you know it all, you're not willing to listen to your team, you're going to die. Lone heroism, this is a little bit different. It's not selfishness the same way as the other two, but it's still selfish. If you're not willing to be a team player and you're not willing to let your team help you, this is not in the same vein as the other two where you think you're better than your team. This is, no, you don't want them to have to work too hard. Oh, you'll take it on yourself. That does not work for anybody. You have to work together as a team. And then the last one being comfort is that's selfish in its own way, because you're trying to sit back and say, oh, you know what, you guys, I'm going to just hang out here at the one of the base camps, and you guys go up the mountain without me. You don't need me. Well, your team does need you. And just like in business, just like in life, if you as a leader are trying to sit back and say, you know what, guys, we've been working hard. You guys, you don't need to work so hard. Let's take our foot off the gas and let's just sit back and cruise for a little while. We don't have anything to worry about. No, that's not what your team needs. Your team needs you to keep going, keep pressing. Great example of that, as an Atlanta native, as a Falcons fan, we blew a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl. Why? Because we took our foot off the gas. We got comfortable, and then the Patriots slowly, they came back and they chipped away little by little. They took us down because we got comfortable. Now, towards the end of the book, luck becomes a topic that they cover. And I really appreciated the way High Altitude Leadership covered it, because it's not the same way a lot of self-development or leadership or business books and speakers will talk about it. It's not the harder I work, the luckier I am, or when preparation meets opportunity, that's called luck. And that's important, and I completely agree with that. I think if you're working hard and you're setting yourself up, when opportunities arise, you can take advantage of them. And some people call that luck. Some people call that just being prepared and working hard. This book actually addresses luck in the dumb luck sense, and it's fantastic because various different times in the book they're talking about how you've got hikers going up the mountain and there's an avalanche, and the avalanche and the snow are just taking this hiker down the side of the mountain, and he's headed towards a cliff. There is nothing he can do in this moment to avoid going over the cliff. But for some reason, whether it's luck, whether it's divine intervention, whether it was just not his day, the snow randomly shifts, and instead of being pushed off a cliff, he goes off to the side and he just chills while the rest of the snow goes flying off the cliff. And he survives. And this happened to the hiker again years later. That's what is, I think, so fascinating to me, is because that's out there, that's in the world, and we don't need to talk about it like, no, that kind of luck doesn't exist. I personally do think I'm a lucky person. I think part of that is because I do try to always make sure I'm prepared and I work hard and I can see an opportunity if it arises. But also, for some unknown reason, I am very lucky when it comes to raffles. Not raffles for money, raffles for crazy things like umbrellas or a box of cookies. I don't know why, but I just have some luck in those areas, and that has nothing to do with preparation or hard work. That just has to do with dumb luck. And I know it doesn't mean much, but I really did appreciate the fact that they addressed dumb luck in this book. High Altitude Leadership really changed my outlook on things, and I highly recommend it to all of you. If you are looking to buy it, I will leave a link to purchase the book in the description down below. If you enjoyed this video and if you're interested in more content like this and you want to level up in life and level up your leadership skills, then please subscribe to my YouTube channel and please follow me on social media. My question for everyone out there today is, what is your compelling saga? And if you don't have one, have I piqued your interest in creating one for yourself? Tell me about it in the comment section down below. I can't wait to see what all you have to say, and I will see you all next time.